Hey guys, it's me Astrid, and today I wanted to talk to you about repotting your Catasetums. And if you don't bloom, you are going in the trash, going in the trash, going in the trash. A lot of you guys have been asking me lately, hey Astrid, can I repot my Catasetum into semi-hydroponics now? And for the too long don't read crowd, the answer is no, don't do it. Although for those of you who want some insights onto why I think you shouldn't, keep listening. Now, allow me to preface this video with saying, hi, me Astrid, orchid grower, has been growing orchids for 3 years, but catasetums for 7 to 8 months. Meaning, I'm not a catasetum expert, and you should take my advice on catasetums with a grain of salt, because I may not necessarily be giving correct information. I feel like it's, well-informed, well-hypothesized information, but is it from an expert? No. So please take it with a grain of salt. Now let's get started on this. First thing is I want to talk to you a little bit about the growth habit of Catasetum orchids. So the growth habit is very interesting for these orchids, and it's different from a lot of other orchids because these go through a clear dormancy period. They come from climates where they have a very distinct wet season and a very distinct dry season. And during the dry season, they go dormant because I'm not getting any water, I'm not getting any nutrients, why am I going to waste my time trying to grow here? They're dormant in the dry times of the year, which is winter, for those of us who have more distinct seasons, and they don't get any water. They don't get wet at all. You leave them dry. And then they use their back bulbs, the nice juicy back bulbs with stored energy, to sustain the plant over this dormancy period. And that bulb contains enough energy to put out a new growth with new roots and keep it going long enough to wait for the rains to come. Once the catasetums start going, they really start going. I had a catasetum with a growth that was this big 1 month, and the next month it was this big. They grow rapidly. Then, of course, once the summer growth period where they get lots of rain, lots of nutrients, lots of everything all at once ends, they start to shed their leaves, they start to maybe some of them bloom, and then they go dormant again. And that is another dry season. You don't get them wet or they will rot. They really will rot if they're wet during this time. Humidity is good, wetness is bad. And that's their general growing habit. Now, in the home, you've got to reflect this and you've got to understand this to kind of understand these plants' needs. Well, what do they need in summertime? They need every opportunity to get lots of nutrients and lots of water and lots of everything so they can grow really fast, because half the year they're procrastinating and the other half of the year they're kicking ass and taking names with their growth. Now, let's think, how do plants get their nutrients? What's the most important thing? Is it their leaves? Well, sure, their leaves, do photosynthesis and they absorb light and convert it to energy very efficiently. That's important, you need energy. But the roots are what's taking up most of the water and most of the nutrients for the plant. Though we could talk gas exchange in the leaves, but for simplicity's sake, we're going to say the roots are the plant's intestines, and if you don't got no intestines, you don't got no vitamin absorption, and you're going to die. Orchid roots grow out and adapt to the environment that they are placed in. That's the common hearsay of orchid growers. I haven't seen data on it, but that's what people say. A root grows into an environment and it wants to stay in that environment. So when you change that environment rapidly, what's going to happen is some of the roots will die. If the change is too drastic, I know we've all done this, a lot of your roots are going to die or rot off or whatever, and that's a bummer. But if you take a catasetum and you repot it during this time, you're going to really set it back because it has to do all its growth in a concentrated amount of time. First thing, your roots are going to go from one environment to another and they might not do well. I'm not saying that they will all die or they will do badly. I'm saying changing your roots environment is giving you the possibility of having some of them die or all of them die or 1 or 2 of them dying. It's putting it at a risk. The next thing is that when you repot orchids, you're guaranteed that your human fatty fat fingers are going to break some of the roots. We have all done it. I've done it. You've done it. We all break our plants when we repot them. And so you don't want to break any roots during this time. It's really important to give this plant as much possible growth as it can have. The next thing is that these orchids, if you just got them in the mail, have already gone through a shock. When you ship orchids, a lot of times they're going through a shock. And Fred Clark told me once that Catasetum leaves don't travel well. And I'm already seeing some of my Catasetum leaves on my new Catasetums turn yellow and begin to fade. which is super annoying, but what can you do? They don't like to travel. And since the plant is already losing some of its leaves, and now you're going to damage the roots, you're going to really set this plant back in its time where it should be just bursting with growth. The other thing I want to talk about is growing Catasetums in semi-hydroponic. I put my Catasetums in semi-hydroponics against the advice of Fred Clark, who is one of the leading experts in growing them. I want to grow plants my way and only my way, and that's it. That's the end of the story. So if a plant doesn't do well growing my way, I get rid of it. You guys are only seeing my successes because those happen to do well my way. It doesn't mean my way is the best way to grow plants. Because of that, a lot of you guys are seeing my Catasetums in semi-hydroponics, and you're saying, wow, yours is doing so well. I want mine to do so well, so I'm going to copy you. That's a good idea. But I've only been growing Catasetums in semi-hydroponics for like 4 months, if that. And because of that, I have no data saying whether the long-term success of this method is going to be good or it's going to be long-term failure. I don't know. And if you're going to do the same things as me, I want you to know I'm doing this without the knowledge of this being successful in the long term. I'm doing this as an experiment. I'm a scientist. I need data. If you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to try it and see why I can't do it. That's just how I roll. Finally, sphagnum moss is actually a really wonderful growing medium for Catasetums. When they grow in the wild, I've seen lots of pictures of them growing between the leaves on the top of palm trees. And in that area, it's mushy and wet and soft and moist all the time. And I think that isn't very much unlike sphagnum moss. So your Catasetums and sphagnum moss are going to do just fine. That is the way they like to grow. That is the way they want to grow. And those roots are going to really appreciate being in sphagnum moss, so don't worry about that. If you really want to repot your Catasetum into semi-hydroponics, the active growing season is not the time of year for you to do it. However, there is a perfect time of year to do it, and guess when that is? Ding ding, during dormancy. So, when the Catasetum goes dormant, it gets no water, it gets no nutrients. In fact, it doesn't really need its roots at all. And I've cut off all the roots of my Catasetums when they go dormant, and almost all of them did very well and survived that very well. They don't really need their roots. They don't really need them. So what you can do, take your Catasetum out of its pot, unpot it, leave the roots, cut the roots off. I really don't know what's the best thing to do, but once it's dormant, you just take it, set it on top of the pot that you want it to be in with the medium you want it to be in, stake it up so it's nice, tight, and secure, and then wait for the new growths to emerge in late winter and early spring. Because in that time, the plant will put out its roots, they will grow cozily into their environment and do really well for you. It's gone very well for me this year, and I look forward to seeing how it goes next year. Anyway, that's my 2 cents or 10 cents or $1 on what I think about repotting Catasetum orchids at this time of year and why I think that you should not do it. I hope it was enlightening, I hope it was helpful, and remember, I'm not an expert on these plants, I'm just learning them this first year, just like you might be. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, happy growing, bye!